The Gulf of Tonkin lay shrouded in darkness, waves slashing against the hulls of patrolling ships. A cold wind carried the scent of salt and tension as distant lights flickered on the horizon. Suddenly, tracer rounds cut through the night like fiery comets, and the roar of engines shattered the silence. A Chinese Type 055 destroyer lurched violently, flames licking its sides as explosions echoed across the water. Smoke coiled into the sky. 3:15 a.m. Gulf of Tonkin. On board the USS Blue Ridge, radar screens flickered violently as dozens of unidentified blips converged on the fleet's position. At first, the officers assumed routine fishing boats, small shadows skimming the waves. But infrared cameras revealed the truth: an armada of Chinese Type 52D and Type 055 destroyers moving in precise formation, their radar signatures strong, disciplined, and unmistakably military. The bridge erupted with urgent commands, messages sent to the Pentagon and U.S. Pacific Command in real time. Sailors checked weapons, calibrated missile systems, and ran damage assessments, aware that the slightest misstep could ignite catastrophe. Every eye was fixed on the horizon, where the first glint of steel reflected the rising tension. Communications hummed, silence hung heavy. For the crew, these moments were a test of nerves, training, and readiness, a calm before the inevitable clash that would decide control over the strategic waters of the Gulf. 3:34 a.m. The Gulf of Tonkin erupted into a chessboard of moving steel as both navies shifted into full tactical formations. The Chinese fleet widened its arc, 11 destroyers fanning out to encircle the American ships, their wakes carving ghostly trails across the black water. High above, the P-8A Poseidon sent back thermal imagery showing missile silo doors opening on several Chinese vessels, a clear sign the standoff was nearing its breaking point. Aboard the USS Blue Ridge, Captain Morgan issued rapid-fire commands. Two Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Dewey and USS Muston, broke formation and surged forward, creating a defensive barrier. Their Aegis combat systems activated, radar beams cutting through the night as they tracked hundreds of potential threats. Anti-ship missiles, drone swarms, even submarine signatures lurking beneath the waves. China answered with aggressive maneuvers of its own. A Type 055 cruiser executed a sharp turn at high speed, skimming dangerously close to the USS Dewey. Its deck guns rotated, locking briefly onto the American vessel before shifting away. It wasn't an attack but a message: we're willing to go further. Drone swarms launched from Chinese ships buzzed into formation like a dark cloud, probing U.S. electronic defenses. The Blue Ridge countered with powerful jamming pulses, forcing half the drones to spiral out of formation. But the remaining drones pressed forward, feeding targeting data to their fleet through encrypted channels. The ocean boiled with tension. Every sonar ping echoed like a warning. Every radar sweep felt like a countdown. Then came the moment that changed everything. An unidentified missile streaked across the sky, no origin confirmed, no warning issued. It detonated 400 meters from the USS Muston, sending a white-hot shockwave across the water. Both fleets froze. The first real shot had been fired, and the line between deterrence and war was dissolving fast. The explosion near the USS Muston spread across global news networks within minutes. Grainy satellite photos, intercepted radio chatter, and frantic speculation swarmed the internet before dawn. By the time the sun rose over Washington, D.C., every major intelligence agency was already scrambling for answers. Inside the White House Situation Room, tension hung thick in the air. Advisors argued over the missile's origin, but no one could agree on a definitive source. The trajectory was ambiguous, blurred by heavy jamming from both fleets. It could have come from a rogue drone, a misfired system, or even a deliberate attempt by a third party to spark conflict. But perception mattered more than truth, and the world's two largest powers were seconds away from escalation. In Beijing, the Politburo held an emergency session. Chinese commanders insisted they had not fired the missile, accusing the U.S. of staging a provocation. State media quickly launched a wave of statements framing the incident as American aggression. Public outrage surged online, fueled by patriotic fervor and blurred clips of the near hit. Diplomats raced to control the narrative. The U.S. demanded immediate communication through the military hotline, but hours passed without response. China countered by warning that any further U.S. movement in the region would be treated as a violation of sovereignty. Allies on both sides, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and several Southeast Asian nations scrambled to prepare emergency defense protocols. Markets crashed, oil prices spiked, airports braced for shutdowns. Yet behind closed doors, both nations quietly panicked. Neither wanted war, but both feared appearing weak. Pride had become a loaded weapon, and miscalculation was now the deadliest threat. As the world watched, two superpowers stood on a knife's edge, each trying to decipher whether the explosion was an accident or the first trigger of a global catastrophe. While official statements from both Washington and Beijing called for restraint, the real struggle unfolded far from cameras and press rooms. Intelligence agencies on both sides initiated covert operations, racing to uncover the truth behind the mysterious missile launch before the world spiraled into irreversible chaos. In Langley, a classified task force was activated at dawn. Satellite technicians pored over high-resolution images frame by frame, searching for heat signatures or launch patterns that conventional systems might have missed. Analysts suspected a hidden third-party actor, possibly a well-funded mercenary group or a rogue military faction eager to ignite conflict for its own gain. But without concrete proof, the White House could not risk revealing such a theory. Meanwhile, deep within a cyber facility on the outskirts of Beijing, Chinese intelligence officers launched their own silent offensive. Elite hackers probed American naval networks, hunting for traces of tampering or falsified telemetry. Their mission was clear: determine whether the U.S. had manipulated the data to shift blame toward China. Every piece of information became ammunition in an invisible war of perception. In the South China Sea itself, the tension thickened. Submarines from both nations drifted in the depths, silent and lethal, like predators circling each other in the dark. Unmarked reconnaissance drones flew above the waves, collecting data while keeping deniability intact. Each side hoped to find answers first, and feared what might happen if the other side discovered them instead. Amid the chaos, a single thread of evidence began to emerge: unusual encrypted signals traced to a remote island used by smugglers and covert arms dealers. Neither nation publicly acknowledged the discovery, but both sent special operations teams toward the location. The race for truth had become a race for control, and whoever uncovered the mastermind behind the missile first would wield the power to reshape the world. Under the cover of night, two elite strike teams, one American, one Chinese, approached the remote island identified in the encrypted transmissions. Neither side knew the other had also intercepted the signal. Neither side planned for what awaited them. The U.S. Navy SEALs arrived first, slipping through the blackened waters in rigid, inflatable boats. Their night vision goggles cut through the darkness, revealing rusted fuel tanks, dilapidated warehouses, and the faint glow of generators deep inside the jungle. Intelligence suggested the island was a hub for smugglers, but the level of activity hinted at something far larger, something organized, something dangerous. Minutes later, a Chinese PLA Special Forces team parachuted silently onto the opposite side of the island. They moved like shadows through the brush, guided by drone surveillance and intercepted communications. Their commanders believed a rogue private military contractor had staged the missile attack, hoping to escalate tensions for profit. Unbeknownst to both teams, a heavily armed mercenary faction was already preparing to evacuate. Crates of weapons, narcotics, and encrypted hard drives were being loaded onto speedboats. The operation was vast, global, and the missile launch had been only the first step. The two strike teams collided near the central warehouse. For a split second, rifles lifted, fingers tightened, and the world teetered between cooperation and catastrophe. But before either side could act, explosions ripped through the compound. Mercenaries opened fire from the rooftops, forcing Americans and Chinese soldiers to take cover side by side. In that moment they understood. The true enemy was neither flag nor nation, but the shadow network manipulating them both. With the warehouse collapsing around them, the two rival forces reluctantly formed a temporary alliance. They had one goal: now capture the mastermind before he escaped the island. But the clock was ticking. The enemy was already on the move. As the smoke began to clear, the improvised alliance between the American and Chinese special forces pressed deeper into the island's command center. What they found inside forced both teams to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the escalating crisis. The central bunker was larger than expected, lined with satellite uplinks, encrypted servers, and tactical maps spanning multiple continents. This was no ordinary smuggling hub. It was the operational heart of a global black market syndicate known only in intelligence circles as the Meridian Collective. Their motives were simple: profit from chaos. War meant money. Rising tensions meant power. By engineering crises between nations, they could control everything from energy routes to weapons trafficking. At the center of the bunker stood a holographic table displaying real-time data feeds. Dozens of red markers blinked across the Pacific ships, submarines, and drones that had been manipulated into dangerous proximity by falsified intelligence. The missile strike was only the beginning. Meridian had planted false signals in both US and Chinese systems, pushing the two superpowers toward open conflict. Just as the teams began copying the data, a distorted voice came through the speakers. "We applaud your cooperation," the mastermind taunted, "but you are far too late." Hidden charges detonated beneath the bunker floor. The ground shook violently, alarms blaring as concrete fractured. The enemy was erasing all traces of their operation. In the chaos, a live feed flickered onto a nearby screen, the Meridian leader boarding a stealth boat already speeding away from the island. Both teams scrambled out moments before the bunker collapsed into a burning crater. Breathing heavily, soaked in ash and seawater, they realized the scale of what they were up against. Their nations had nearly been dragged into war by a phantom enemy, one still out there, one step ahead. And now, stopping him was their shared mission. News of the island explosion spread across the world within minutes. Satellite images leaked online, sparking a storm of speculation. Some blamed the U.S., others pointed fingers at China. Social media erupted with accusations, conspiracy theories, and calls for retaliation. The very chaos Meridian intended was now unfolding across the global stage. In Washington, emergency meetings consumed the Pentagon. Analysts pored over intercepted communications, piecing together fragments of the truth. The data recovered from the island hinted at a sophisticated shadow network capable of infiltrating military channels, manipulating intelligence, and staging false flag operations. But the evidence was incomplete, too damaged, too fragmented to present to the world. Meanwhile, in Beijing, high-ranking officials reviewed their own satellite logs. They, too, saw signs of tampering digital footprints that did not match American cyber patterns. Behind closed doors, Chinese commanders reluctantly acknowledged that a third-party actor might be exploiting both nations. Yet publicly, they maintained a tone of suspicion, unwilling to appear weak. Around the Pacific, fleets from multiple countries moved into higher alert. Japan deployed reconnaissance aircraft. Australia increased maritime surveillance. The Philippines and Vietnam fortified strategic outposts, fearing the conflict might spill into their waters. On the ground, the American and Chinese special forces were extracted to a neutral vessel, where an uneasy cooperation continued. Intelligence officers from both sides interviewed the surviving operatives, comparing notes, verifying timelines, and trying to rebuild the digital puzzle Meridian had destroyed. For the first time, both nations stared at the same threat, a faceless enemy manipulating global powers like chess pieces. Yet the mastermind had already vanished into international waters. The world was tense, fragile, uncertain. One wrong move could ignite the conflict Meridian had worked so hard to spark. And somewhere in the shadows, the next phase of his plan was already beginning. As dawn broke over the Pacific, the remaining members of the Joint Task Force gathered aboard the neutral command vessel. The ocean was calm again, but every soldier knew this silence was temporary, a pause before a much greater storm. Intelligence analysts worked non-stop, reconstructing the final fragments of data salvaged from the destroyed bunker. Piece by piece, a clearer picture emerged. Meridian had been planning multiple synchronized operations, each designed to amplify distrust between global powers and push nations toward irreversible conflict. High-level officials from Washington and Beijing joined a secure conference call, both sides reluctantly acknowledging the truth. For the first time in years, their conversations shifted away from rivalry and toward cooperation. If they failed to confront this shadow organization, Meridian would continue to ignite chaos across seas, borders, and governments. The narrow escape from all-out war served as a powerful reminder that misinformation, manipulation, and hidden agendas could be as dangerous as missiles. The mission had ended, but the threat remained, and so did the lesson. True security comes not from dominance, but from clarity, communication, and the courage to question the invisible hands pushing nations toward disaster. The world had been pulled back from the edge, not by weapons, but by truth uncovered just in time. And now, this story becomes a warning to all of us. Stay aware, stay informed, and never underestimate the power of unseen forces shaping global events. If you enjoyed this cinematic storyline and want more intense military, geopolitical, or action thriller episodes, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, leave a comment below telling me what type of confrontation or mission you want to see next. Your ideas help shape the next story,